Hi, I'm speaking to Andy Roberts, who is also known as Liam Hanson. He writes the Murder Squad thrillers under the name of Liam Hanson. Currently lives in South Wales with his wife and 2 children, and he works in a cardiac intensive care unit. His first Murder Squad book is out, called Lies People Tell. I've read an advanced copy of this and I loved it. So I thought I'd get Andy on to tell us something about it. So Andy, would you like to tell us a little bit about the first book in your new series?
Okay, so book 1, Lies People Tell, is an ages-old story of revenge, this time battled out by a serial killer, a local gangster, Billy Creed, and the Cardiff Murder Squad. It's got strong male, strong female leads in it, as you know. There's no shrinking violets in this book. Everybody's there for a purpose. Nobody's there just to fill a slot. So it's set in Cardiff, the spectacular Brecon Beacons, 2 places very local to me, 2 places I like to spend a lot of time in. And it features the 2 main detectives, the Murder Squad lead, DCI Bran Rees, and his sidekick, Detective Sergeant Ellen Jenkins. And the book opens with the discovery of a mutilated woman in one of the local disused factories. That woman just happens to be the sister of the gangster, Billy Creed. And Creed is Rees's career-long nemesis, really. But before Rees can get his teeth stuck into the case, the new chief superintendent at the station, a woman called Rachel Cable, decides to put him on forced leave, partly for his health, although he doesn't understand this at the time or doesn't know this at the time. Rees is suffering from PTSD following the murder of his wife while they were on honeymoon in Rome, about 18 months before the book starts. And so Rees isn't directly involved in the case, but because he's a strong character, he can't help but interfere from the sidelines. And DS Jenkins is forced to work with a new inspector who is a fast-tracked ex-bank manager, and he's not up to it at all, and she can tell that right from the first meeting. She doesn't like him, he's bigoted, he's racist, he's sexist, and she just knows he's not up for the job. And so as things progress in the book, it's quite clear to Jenkins that she might have to go it alone to try to make some inroads in finding the killer. But by doing this, she puts herself and others in danger. And while all this is going on, Billy Creed is trying to exact his own revenge on anybody who he thinks might be involved in the death of his sister. And the whole thing just works towards this sort of crescendo at the end. So there's complete mayhem. So the book is dark, it's gritty, but I've tried to inject a little bit of sort of humor in it here and there just to pull it back. That's it.
As you said, you set it in the Brecon Beacons. Why did you choose to set it there?
Because I spent a lot of time there as a child. Rees, you'll find out in the book that Rees and his friend Yanto grew up in Brecon, and it's very dear to them, and it's dear to them because it was dear to me. I spent, well, not most, but a lot of Sunday afternoons there as a child, playing on the same mountains that you read about in the book, getting an ice cream from the van opposite. There was always a van parked in the lay-by, so we'd play on the mountains and have an ice cream with a sort of mum and dad before going home. It's a spectacular place. I still go there now. There's a waterfall walk. I take the kids, my wife. It's a brilliant place to be, and anybody who hasn't been there should go and see it. So I wanted the book set in the city, but I also wanted to make it a bit rural at times as well. So that's why I chose Brecon.
Yeah, well, it works. It's very effective. You're writing under the pen name of Liam Hanson. Why did you choose to do that?
Because I previously written something under my real name, Andy Roberts. And that was self-published. I wrote a couple of children's books just as a bit of fun, really, something to do with my daughter. We did it one wet school holiday. We came up with she did the illustrations, I did the rhyming text, and we produced a book. And then I went on and did a couple of other little things, one being a dark fantasy type thing, reminiscent of Patrick Rothfuss's Name of the Wind. And I just did it as a bit of fun and self-published it. And then as I got a bit more serious about it, I realized that if I published a crime novel under the name Andy Roberts, it might confuse people. So I decided to sort of branch out and come up with a new name. And Liam Hanson was the one I chose.
Any reason behind that, or just a random name that you picked out the air?
Sort of. The guru of self-publishing is Mark Dawson over in Salisbury. And I used to watch a lot. I still do watch a lot of Mark Dawson's podcasts. And I just love, not love, but I like the way his name appears on his covers. He's got great covers, and the way his name shows on the covers, I liked it. So I chose names that had the same number of letters, thinking that I was going to have my name put on the cover exactly like Mark Dawson's was. And when I was self-published and I asked somebody to do the cover for me, I forgot to tell them that. And so if you look at the self-published version of Lies People Tell, the name Liam Hanson is squeezed into the bottom left-hand corner. So it wouldn't really have mattered what I called myself, but Liam Hanson, purely because it's got the same number of letters as Mark Dawson.
Okay. You've obviously got a crazy day job. How do you manage to juggle that and writing?
I get up at 5 every morning, so I'm doing work somewhere between 7 and 7:30, and then in the intensive care unit by about 8 o'clock. So every weekday morning, I get up at 5, whether I want to or not, and I write for an hour and a bit before going to work. And then on weekends, I give myself 1 hour's lie-in. I get up at 6 and I start writing again. And I do more on a Saturday and Sunday. But I'm not a fast writer. I'm quite inefficient at doing it. So I only manage about 4,000 words a week, which is a bit slow, really.
It sounds like a lot to me. What inspired you to write the characters that you did?
I just like people who are willing to question the world and to question what's going on around them, rather than just be bullied into doing what's expected of them. So Reese is an abrasive character. I think when people start reading the first few chapters of the first book, they might not like him, but I think later in the book you can see who he is, what he becomes. The same with Jenkins. She's got that feisty streak to her as well, and I just like that type of person, somebody who's volatile and you can't always read them, but they've always got your back. I don't like the smiling assassins, the people who that's what we call them around here, smiling assassin, the people who are always smiling at you. They want to be your best friend, and behind the scenes they're not. So I like people who wear their heart on this on the sleeve and just aren't afraid to tell you what they think, but deep down they're good people.
Yeah. You said you self-published a few books, but now you're with Bloodhound. So how did you get to be signed by them?
So I wrote Lies People Tell, and I self-published it on Amazon, and it was out for 2 weeks, I think. I think it was about October 2019. So around about this time last year, I put it up as a self-published book, and I'd been networking with authors, British crime authors, beforehand. People like Martina Cole and Joy Ellis and Howard Linsky, Trevor Wood, and all these people were great, and they were willing to read the book and sort of help me out and give me advice and so on. And two other people who read it were John Nichol and Helen Durant. And it just so happened that one weekend I got a Facebook message of both of them within they were just minutes apart, coincidentally. Both of them advising me or suggesting that I send the manuscript to their publishers. So John was with Bloodhound and Helen with Joffa. I think you call it Joffa. I used to call it Jof, but I think I've heard other people call it Joffa. And so I did, and Bloodhound got back to me first. And to cut a long story short, they offered me a 3-book contract there and then, with first refusal for anything else I write.
Brilliant. So you've got 3, or you've written 3 plans. So are you planning to write further than that, or do you want to write another series or standalones? Where do you plan to go after the 3rd?
Yeah, so the first one's tomorrow. The second one's all done. It's got its cover and everything. That one's due out on January the 5th. And I'm more than halfway now through writing the 3rd book in the series. And at the moment, that's got a release date penciled in for June of next year. And between now and then, I just want to see how the books are received by readers. I think as long as I've got people out there who are enjoying them and are contacting me and asking when the next one's out, that'll spur me on to write more. So hopefully there will be more in the Murder Squad Thrillers series. I think undoubtedly there will be. I've also got ideas for little spin-offs as well. I think people through reading the ARC copies can tell that there's a lot more to DS Jenkins, and there are little spin-off books that I know I'd like to write, whether they be in novella form or in the series of their own. She's got certain interests in profiling and so on. So it might be that there'll be a series with Jenkins as the lead in her own right.
Awesome. As someone that's read them, then that excites me a lot, and I'm happy to nag you regularly if you want me to for more. I could do it on a daily basis, it's no problem. I have nothing better to do at the moment. Could you see your books being made into films or a TV series? And if you did, who would the main characters be in your view?
I think that's probably every author's dream, more so a TV series. You know, if it was one or the other, a film or a TV series. I prefer the TV series, sort of breaking it down into 3 episodes, 4 episodes or something like that, Netflix. As for who'd play them, the characters, I really don't know, other than I think I would insist, if I had a say in it, that the characters were Welsh. There are series like, I don't know if you've watched Hidden.
Yeah.
You watched Hidden? Yeah, it's Hidden and Hinterland. There are plenty of really good Welsh authors out there. Like most people, I'm fiercely patriotic. I set my books in Wales. My characters are Welsh, and whoever played them, predominantly I'd want those to be sort of Welsh as well, for obvious reasons.
Yeah, would you want a cameo in it as well?
Oh, like Harlan Coben, isn't it? I'd sit in the background in the typewriter.
Just wave as you walk past.
Yeah, and I write the 4th book. I don't know. I don't know.
Why not?
Yeah.
Has the coronavirus affected how you write and affected your system?
No, not really. I mean, working where I do, even the lockdown doesn't affect us. I'm still allowed out. I've still got the same working pattern that I had before. It's not as if I'm furloughed and have more time at home to write. I still get up at 5, leave the house 6:30. I'm in the intensive care unit by 8. So no, from that perspective, not. When I started writing the second book, initially, there was a bit of COVID in it, because I think I started writing it around about the March time, February, March, and the books sort of lead on from one another, sort of month by month. So when you read the books, you'll see that they sort of work throughout the year. And I was thinking to myself, well, how can I not write about COVID? People know the books are in the present day. They know what month it is. They know COVID's happening. I need to include COVID. But I did put a couple of posts out on Facebook in some of the readers groups and authors groups and so on, just asking people what they thought. And I think the bulk of replies that I received suggested that people didn't want to read about that sort of thing. They just wanted to escape it. They were picking up a book to escape it. And that because it was fiction, it didn't have to be in there, because I'm making so much else up. I can make up 2020 without it having COVID in there.
Yeah.
People can read the newspapers for the COVID stuff. So
yeah. I've seen them discussions, actually. It's quite interesting. I read Dylan Jones's Trauma, and that actually does mention COVID, and it's done sort of briefly, like, oh, we've got to keep 2 meters away or whatever. And actually it was fine. I wasn't sure if I would enjoy reading it because it's been such a horrible time. But it was done just, to acknowledge that it happened, but not in not a big way. So it is possible, I think. But yeah, I definitely don't want to remember this year.
Yeah, maybe in a future book I'll give it a nod. So when we're out of COVID, maybe book 4, book 5, something like that, when we're well out of it, maybe I'll just mention it then. So it's a case of not having ignored it completely, but I've stayed free of it for the time being, at least.
Yeah, that's good. Fair enough. And then, can you tell us one surprising thing about yourself?
So most people say that writers have to read, and I have to admit that I don't read, which does tend to surprise people in work when I work with new people and they find out I've written some books, and they ask me who I read, and my answer to it is I just don't have the time. And it has to be a very, very good novel to hold my attention. I don't concentrate for long. So when I do read, it tends to be more fact-based. So I'll sit down and read something about somebody rowing the Atlantic or climbing a mountain or making their way through a jungle. And maybe that's a good thing. Some people who've given me feedback in their reviews or have sent me messages have said that my books are slightly different to other crime fiction books. Some people have said that I've brought something new, maybe, and maybe that's because I haven't been influenced by anybody. I haven't read other authors, and so I don't know what they're writing, and so my stuff is just new. But when I do read, if I had to pick one author, it's probably Stuart McBride. When I read Stuart McBride's Cold Granite, I think it was, that prompted me to go out and buy about 9 or 10. Because other books, it probably take me 20 years to read 9 or 10 books. But if I had to pick one author that I would sit down and sort of and read properly, it would be Stuart McBride.
Do you feel any pressure being part of Bloodhound to read your fellow authors' books?
I don't feel under pressure to read them, and I have read some of them. So sometimes we ask one another during the writing process to have a look. Will you give this a read? And I have read them, and I've enjoyed them. I've read, John Nichol, Rob Ashman, probably four or five. Duncan Brockwell's book. They're great books, and there's, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them at all. It's just I just do not have the patience to sit down and read a book, and people find that surprising, because they say, well, you force yourself to sit down and write a book, but it's different. I'm thinking about it in a different way. It's probably using a different part of my brain. And I've always been the same. I've never been somebody who can, keep still for long. As a child, I didn't read. I was out climbing those mountains, up in the Brecon Beacons, and playing football and rugby and boxing and that sort of thing. I'd go out first thing in the morning. I'd come in after dark. I'd be good for nothing. Have my tea, jump in the bath, go to bed, wake up the next day, do the same. Rarely read a book.
So is there anything last thing you want to say about your new book, or any information you can give your readers about where they can find out more about you and your books?
I don't have a website. I might get a website at some point in the future. So I'm on Facebook, the author Liam Hanson, so you can find me on Facebook. The same with Instagram. I only joined Twitter this weekend just because Bloodhound were asking where I was. So I'm completely rubbish at those sorts of things. But I do answer everything every question that's ever sent to me. So if you want to contact me and ask me anything about the books, go to Facebook, go to the Liam Hanson page or the Andy Roberts page. Just message me, and I'll answer you as soon as I can. And Amazon is where the book is up for sale. The paperback and the Kindle version is on Amazon as we speak, and so will the rest of the books. So that's where you can get them. I'm a new author. If you like gritty crime fiction, then give it a go.